Just 5 days after Diane Keaton's passing, her two adopted kids, Dexter and Duke, stormed into the lawyer's office, determined to claim their part of her massive fortune. But things got even messier when Diane's two biological sisters stepped in, demanding their own share. Suddenly, what should have been a moment of grief turned into a chaotic tug of war over millions, and everyone was watching. The speed and tension behind these moves left people asking one thing: what's really going on here? The official death certificate claimed her cause of death was pneumonia. But was it really that simple? In her final weeks, Diane had completely withdrawn from the public eye, losing weight fast, coughing endlessly, and suffering in silence until someone finally made that delayed 911 call. Fans immediately started connecting the dots, asking whether something darker was happening behind closed doors. After all, Diane once told her friends, "I have never loved anyone more than my children." Now, those very words echo with a sting, because as her kids and sisters dive headfirst into this estate war, people can't help but wonder, was that love truly returned? Or was it all just a setup to grab her $100 million fortune? Her final months were full of strange decisions, disappearing from social life, suddenly selling her Beverly Hills home, and cutting off contact with close friends. Everything about it felt off. Could these have been carefully planned moves to isolate her and clear the path for someone to contest her empire? The questions are piling up fast. In the early morning of October 11th, 2025, Diane Keaton, the Hollywood icon, was found in distress at her private Santa Monica home. Paramedics rushed her to St. John's Health Center, but despite fast treatment, she passed away at 79. Her family quickly announced bacterial pneumonia as the cause, but fans and reporters weren't buying it. The timeline just didn't sit right. Her story really began months earlier. In the weeks leading up to her death, Diane had almost vanished. No public appearances, no social media, not even her usual walks under the Los Angeles trees with her beloved dog, Reggie. Friends said her health had been sliding downhill since early 2025, when she was forced to leave her Beverly Hills mansion after the devastating wildfires. She relocated to Palm Springs, a quiet, lonely place. But it seemed like the light in her had faded. Why would someone so full of energy, laughter, and creativity suddenly shut herself away like that? Was there another illness being kept secret? Doctors often warn that pneumonia hits older adults hard, especially when their immune systems are weak. And at 79, Diane was certainly vulnerable. But what shook everyone was how fast she declined. One close friend said quietly, "She lost a lot of weight." Was that just the pneumonia, or something else slowly draining her strength? When the 911 call came in that morning, she was found collapsed at home. So why hadn't anyone noticed sooner? Was Diane trying to hide what was really happening to her? Diane had faced serious health battles before. At just 20, she fought off skin cancer, basal cell carcinoma, caused by years of unprotected sun exposure in California. Decades later, another form, squamous cell carcinoma, returned, forcing her into 2 surgeries. With that trademark smile, she once admitted she'd been too careless with her skin. Then came an even deeper struggle: bulimia. In her memoir, Diane revealed how pressure from a Broadway role led her into dangerous eating cycles, sometimes consuming up to 20,000 calories a day, fried chicken, sweets, anything she could find, only to purge it all. Though she overcame it through therapy, she called herself a recovering addict for life. None of these illnesses connected to her lungs, though. So again, why was her death pinned on pneumonia? Then there was that strange decision earlier in 2025, selling her dream Beverly Hills home out of nowhere. This wasn't just any property. Diane had poured her heart into restoring it, calling it her forever home. For someone known for her deep passion for architecture and design, especially classic Spanish colonial revival homes, the sale shocked everyone. Why would she give up something she loved so deeply and so suddenly? Was she struggling financially, or was something or someone pushing her to make that choice? Close sources whispered that her declining health might have forced the sale, but the family's silence only made things look more suspicious. Some even speculated there could have been outside pressure, personal, emotional, maybe even legal. Whatever it was, it left a major hole in the story of her final days. Fans couldn't shake the feeling that Diane knew something was coming, or that someone wanted her out of that house. Fast. The home that once reflected her warmth and artistic soul had turned into a haunting mystery. After her passing, the family acted quickly, arranging for her cremation and announcing her death, but refusing to answer any questions about her health or what led up to it. That wall of silence sent shockwaves through the public. People started to believe there was more to the story, that maybe something vital was being hidden. And when her two adopted children, Duke and Dexter, showed up at the lawyer's office just days later to fight over her estate, everything exploded into scandal. Back in Diane Keaton's 50s, when her Hollywood career was still blazing bright with legendary roles in The Godfather and Annie Hall, she shocked everyone by taking a bold turn. Instead of chasing love or marriage, she chose to become a single mom, completely on her own. In 1996, at age 50, Diane adopted her first child, a baby girl named Dexter, born on December 15, 1995. It was a heartfelt, life-altering decision that changed everything. She later admitted she never thought she'd be ready for motherhood, but once she held Dexter in her arms, her world shifted forever. 5 years later, she opened her heart again, adopting her son Duke, born February 8, 2000. By 55, Diane was raising two children solo in her charming Beverly Hills home, balancing red carpets with bedtime stories. Dexter and Duke grew up surrounded by love, but always out of the spotlight. They appeared only at rare events, like film premieres or Dexter's warm, joyful wedding photo in 2021, where Diane's smile said it all. Everything looked perfect until that illusion shattered in an instant. When Diane passed, the grief barely settled before a storm hit. While the world mourned the Annie Hall legend, her two children dove into a fierce legal fight over her estimated $100 million estate. What could have possibly torn this family apart so fast? On the morning of October 11, 2025, Diane took her final breath, and within hours, her Beverly Hills home turned from a place of sorrow to the center of a brewing feud. Dexter and Duke didn't waste time. They rushed straight to Diane's lawyers, determined to protect their interests. Just 5 days later, on October 16th, Dexter, now an ambitious interior designer, was spotted leaving a top Los Angeles law firm, clutching a thick folder of documents. According to insiders, she claimed she deserved the biggest slice of the inheritance because she'd been with Diane the longest, since her 1996 adoption. Her eyes were set on one prize, the Brentwood House, the jewel of Diane's real estate empire, purchased in 2009 for $4.7 million and completely transformed under Diane's creative eye. Dexter argued that she'd helped with the renovations, learned her mother's passion for architecture, and even assisted on her famous design book, The House That Pinterest Built. For her, that house wasn't just property. It was proof of their unbreakable bond. "That's our legacy," she reportedly told friends. But Duke wasn't about to sit quietly. The young tech entrepreneur hit back hard, showing up at another law office in Santa Monica with emails and messages from his mother as evidence. He believed he was entitled to most of the cash and royalties, roughly $40 to $50 million, from Diane's films and best-selling memoirs. He told close friends Diane had often joked that he'd continue my big dream. Duke insisted that his mother's trust fund should fall under his control, saying he'd use it to grow his own company, a vision inspired by her independence and drive. Though both children were chosen through love, their bond was never truly solid, and now it was cracking under pressure. Sources say the tension went way back. Dexter, 5 years older, was always the one Diane brought to events and architectural tours. She saw herself as Diane's spiritual heir, the child who understood her mother's artistic soul. Duke, on the other hand, was more business-minded and independent, often feeling overshadowed, like he was living in Dexter's shadow. A family friend put it simply, they don't hate each other, but they've never really been close. Now that emotional distance had turned into a full-blown war, and the inheritance was the battlefield, things got even murkier when reports surfaced that Diane had left a detailed will. First written in 2015 and last updated in March 2025, just before she sold her beloved Beverly Hills home. The trust listed both Dexter and Duke as heirs, but didn't specify who got what. Insiders claim Diane intended for Dexter to inherit most of the real estate, while Duke would get the cash, stocks, and investment shares. But because the will was vague, it left room for chaos. And chaos came roaring in. Soon, whispers about another layer of drama spread. A rumored donation Diane had planned for the LA Conservancy, an organization she'd supported for decades. Dexter was furious. She allegedly argued her mother never wanted to sell or donate the homes, saying they were meant to stay in the family as part of Diane's artistic legacy. Duke fired back, accusing Dexter of trying to hoard assets under the excuse of protecting Mom's legacy, while he just wanted to honor her entrepreneurial spirit. The feud exploded when Dexter secretly hired a private lawyer to re-examine the trust, convinced Duke might have pressured Diane to tweak her will during her final months. Meanwhile, Duke was accused of contacting Diane's real estate partners right after the funeral, trying to reassess properties in Laguna Beach in Arizona, even though they had already been sold. The tension was boiling over. What began as a quiet farewell to a beloved actress had turned into a family showdown no one saw coming, and the world was watching every shocking move. Dexter slammed Duke's move as flat-out unethical, but Duke shot back, saying he just wanted everything to be transparent and that nothing in their mom's estate should slip through the cracks. The tension was electric. Every day filled with sharp emails, heated phone calls, and lawyer meetings that felt more like battlegrounds than discussions. According to one insider, things got so intense that the two nearly went off on each other right inside the lawyer's office. And just when you thought it couldn't get messier, boom! Diane's biological sisters jumped in. Suddenly, this wasn't just a fight between two adopted kids. It was turning into a full-blown family war. Dory Hall, Diane's youngest sister, around 75, stepped out of the shadows with a shocking claim. Though a lesser-known actress, she'd always stayed close to Diane. Dory insisted her late sister had promised to leave her a portion of the estate to help her during her later years. She quickly hired a Los Angeles attorney to review Diane's will, the one first drafted in 2015 and updated in March 2025, convinced something in there was meant for her and possibly overlooked by Dexter and Duke. Then came Robin Hall, the other sister, somewhere between 73 and 77, who usually stayed quiet and away from the spotlight. But this time, she wasn't holding back. Through a tense call with Dexter, Robin demanded a share of Diane's book royalties, especially from Then Again and Brother and Sister, where both she and Dory were mentioned as family supporters. Robin argued she'd cared for their brother Randy Hall for years and deserved recognition and financial compensation. Things exploded when Dory and Robin decided to bypass Dexter altogether and reach out to Duke directly. At a meeting in Santa Monica, Dory didn't sugarcoat it. She flat-out demanded Duke share part of the estate, saying, "We're Diane's blood, not just adopted children." Duke, already on edge from his fight with Dexter, pushed back, saying the trust clearly stated only the two adopted kids were legal heirs. Dexter, meanwhile, was furious that her aunts were even involved. She accused them of suddenly showing up only when they smelled money. In an email to her lawyer, she wrote that Dory and Robin had lived independent lives, contributing nothing to Diane's career or estate. She even hinted that Dory, once part of the Actors Equity Association, may have already received financial help from Diane before, and now wanted more. But Dory and Robin weren't backing down. They appeared together at a law office in Los Angeles, demanding full transparency of the will. They questioned every dollar, from donations to the LA Conservancy to animal shelters and food banks that Diane had supported for decades. They wanted to make sure their shares weren't quietly redirected elsewhere. Robin even called Dexter personally, her voice trembling but firm, asking for a family meeting to settle things like adults. Dexter refused coldly, saying, "Mom chose us, not the aunts." Surprisingly, Duke sided with Dexter on that one. Even though the two weren't exactly close, they stood united against their aunt's demands, at least for the moment. Duke even brought in an extra legal team to protect himself, insisting the trust was designed to prioritize Diane's adopted children, not her biological siblings. But this fragile alliance didn't last long, because while they agreed on keeping the sisters out, they were still clashing over who got the bigger cut. Duke wanted control of the cash and royalties, while Dexter held tight to the homes, art, and design pieces. The lawyer's office became a pressure cooker, hours of back-and-forth arguments that went nowhere. Lawyers kept reminding everyone, the will decides everything. But that didn't calm anyone down. According to one insider, the fights got so heated that Dory and Robin nearly lunged toward Duke during one meeting, only to be stopped in time. It was pure chaos, and the heartbreaking truth was becoming clear. Diane, who once wrote in Then Again that Dexter and Duke were everything to me, could never have imagined her children turning on each other like this. She tried to raise them with love, but being adopted at different times and with such different personalities had quietly built emotional walls between them. Those cracks were now splitting wide open, Even Diane's closest friends, including Jane Fonda, refused to comment publicly, though one source said they quietly felt heartbroken, whispering, Diane would be devastated to see this. By the time the dust began to settle, one thing was undeniable. Diane Keaton left behind an empire worth around $100 million. Her fortune wasn't just built on acting, but also on her decades of directing, writing, producing, and especially her real estate empire, which had outperformed her Hollywood paychecks. Real estate was her passion, her playground. She was famous for flipping California's most beautiful historic homes, turning dusty relics into architectural gems. Her portfolio was massive, worth roughly $50 to $60 million. It included her prized Brentwood home in Los Angeles, valued between $20 and $30 million, plus a $7.5 million Laguna Beach property she'd flipped in 2006 for over $12 million. She'd also owned a stunning Pacific Palisades villa, a Tucson retreat, and even a Bel Air mansion she sold back in 2005 for a jaw-dropping $16.5 million. One of her Spanish colonial masterpieces even went to producer Ryan Murphy for $10 million, and another to Madonna herself for $6.5 million. Every sale told a story, and every home carried a piece of her creative soul. But now, those same properties were fueling a feud that Diane, with all her grace and heart, probably never dreamed would happen. Every one of Diane Keaton's real estate deals wasn't just about profit. It was pure passion. Her architectural restorations were so stunning that Architectural Digest crowned her the Queen of Hollywood House Restoration. Each project reflected her love for preserving history, and her dedication turned her into a legend far beyond acting. But Diane's empire stretched far wider than real estate. Her remaining assets, estimated between $40 and $50 million, came from her blockbuster film career, directing work, writing, and smart investments. She earned millions starring in timeless hits like The Godfather, Annie Hall, Reds, Father of the Bride, Something's Gotta Give, and The Family Stone. Her paycheck per major project averaged around $5 to $10 million. Serious movie star money. And she didn't stop there. As a director and producer, Diane worked behind the camera too, from Belinda Carlisle's hit music video, Heaven is a Place on Earth, to successful TV productions that padded her income with steady paychecks. Her 3 best-selling memoirs, Then Again, 2011, Let's Just Say It Wasn't Pretty, 2015, and Brother and Sister, 2020, along with speaking gigs and endorsements, earned her another $10 to $15 million. She even ventured into photography and interior design, turning her creativity into cash. Her book, The House That Pinterest Built, inspired by her Brentwood masterpiece, became a major hit, producing ongoing royalties and brand collaborations. Her investment strategy was as meticulous as her design sense. Starting in the 1980s with her first apartment in New York's San Remo, Diane took a long-game approach, buying undervalued historic homes, restoring them for years, and selling when their value soared. She wasn't chasing quick flips, she was preserving beauty. For 2 decades, she served on the LA Conservancy Board, pouring time and money into saving California's historic architecture. But behind all that success, a dark storm was brewing. And people couldn't help but wonder, was Diane's death really from pneumonia? Or something far more sinister? Rumors started to swirl, painting a haunting theory that Dexter and Duke, the very children Diane adored, might have had motives far colder than anyone imagined. As eerie details surfaced, fans were left in shock. In the last 5 months of her life, Diane practically vanished from sight. No cheerful walks with her dog Reggie, no playful posts on Instagram, no public events, nothing. Close friends told people that after moving from Beverly Hills to Palm Springs due to the wildfires, she lived in complete isolation, surrounded only by her adopted kids, Dexter and Duke. Not a single new photo, not a single update. For someone as lively and connected as Diane, this silence was chilling. Had Dexter and Duke deliberately cut off her outside world? Were they keeping her hidden, controlling what the public and her friends saw? The thought alone sent shivers through her fans. Even stranger, her death wasn't announced right away. The public didn't learn about it until October 16, 2025, when the death certificate was finally released, 5 whole days after the 911 call. That call, made on October 11th, reported Diane collapsing at home. But why was help delayed so long? Sources said Diane had been visibly frail, coughing constantly and losing weight rapidly in the weeks leading up to that morning. Yet there were no medical records showing she'd seen a doctor. Could her children, the ones closest to her, have ignored the warning signs, or worse, kept her from getting help? The official report said bacterial pneumonia, but many fans weren't convinced. Doctors explained that pneumonia in older adults can develop from minor infections, but it can also result from environmental factors, like poor hygiene or exposure to harmful bacteria. That sparked a chilling theory. What if Diane's living conditions in those final months weren't safe? Some speculated that Dexter and Duke, who lived with her at the time, might have unintentionally or intentionally let her health deteriorate by neglecting her care. Maybe she wasn't eating enough, wasn't resting properly, or wasn't getting the medical attention she needed. One friend recalled sadly, she'd lost so much weight, she didn't look like herself anymore. And when the estate battle exploded just days after her passing, suspicions only grew louder. Insiders pointed out that Diane's sudden sale of her beloved Beverly Hills home in early 2025 might not have been her idea at all. Could her children have pressured her to liquidate it, turning property into easy-to-split cash? The timing looked too perfect. There were also whispers about her mental state. Diane had long been open about her struggles with bulimia and self-image, calling herself a recovering addict for life. In her later years, she sometimes described feeling more anxious and withdrawn. Could her children have taken advantage of that vulnerability, subtly steering her decisions when she was at her weakest? Some close friends noted that in her final months, Diane barely communicated anymore, relying almost entirely on Dexter and Duke for emotional and daily support. If they had limited her nutrition, her medicine, or even applied quiet emotional pressure, then maybe pneumonia was just the final cover story, a convenient way to explain something much deeper. And the biggest question everyone kept asking, why? Even though Diane loved them deeply, Dexter and Duke had always lived in the shadow of her fame. They were adopted children trying to find their place in a world where their mother was a Hollywood icon. Maybe they wanted to prove they were worthy, not just emotionally, but financially too. To the world, they were grieving children. But behind closed doors, were they something else entirely? Dexter had always been the artistic one, obsessed with interior design and deeply attached to the Brentwood home. She saw it as more than just a house. It was a symbol of her bond with her mother. Duke, on the other hand, was all business, a tech-driven dreamer chasing the next big idea. He didn't care for walls or memories. He needed cash to fund his ambitions. But could their desires have gone so far that they crossed the line into something unthinkable? There was no hard proof, yet the eerie mix of Diane's sudden isolation, the delayed emergency call, and the way the estate battle erupted made everyone raise an eyebrow. Fans wasted no time. Reddit, Twitter, and forums exploded with theories. This wasn't just pneumonia, many claimed. Something darker happened. The more people pieced together the timeline, the more chilling it sounded. Diane's final months were marked by complete seclusion in her Palm Springs villa, a once bright star now living behind closed doors, her only company being Dexter and Duke. The story that spread online was downright haunting. Dexter, playing the caring daughter, kept close under the pretense of helping her mother rest. Duke, the slick entrepreneur, handled finances and paperwork, always helping, always involved. Together, they slowly took control of every corner of Diane's life. Meals became smaller and less nutritious. Her meds were mixed up, sometimes skipped altogether. Her health began to fade. But Diane, ever trusting, believed her children were doing their best. Behind that facade of care, everything seemed orchestrated. They kept friends at bay, canceled visits, and managed her calls. Even Diane's beloved dog walks with Reggie stopped. Every time she expressed a wish to go out or meet someone, they'd say, "Mom, you're too tired. Just rest." Step by step, they made her world smaller, tighter, and completely under their control. By September 2025, her body was frail. Coughing fits, breathlessness, drastic weight loss. Yet still, no doctor was called. Dexter kept soothing her, saying she just needed rest, while Duke busied himself with documents, making sure all wills, trusts, and accounts stayed exactly where he wanted them. And then came October 11th. That morning, Diane's condition suddenly worsened. She collapsed. But the 911 call didn't come right away. When help finally arrived, she was unresponsive. It was too late. The death certificate would later read bacterial pneumonia. But many found that explanation too neat, too convenient. To them, it wasn't an illness. It was the tragic end of a slow, calculated plan. Almost immediately, Dexter and Duke swung into action like they'd been waiting for this moment. Lawyers were called, documents were filed, and the estate was locked down tight. Within days, control of assets had shifted firmly into their hands. The sisters, Dory and Robin, were pushed out, denied access, and silenced. It was as if Dexter and Duke had rehearsed every step in advance. Insiders whispered that it all unfolded like a perfect family crime. No evidence, no witnesses, no loose ends, just two grieving children front and center, while every decision quietly went their way. To the outside world, it looked like mourning, but behind those closed legal doors, it was all about power, property, and inheritance. If those online theories hold even a shred of truth, the story becomes heartbreakingly tragic. Diane Keaton, a woman who became a mother at 50 purely out of love, might have been betrayed by the very children she had sacrificed everything for. She had adopted Dexter in 1996 and Duke in 2001, determined to give them stability, privacy, and warmth away from Hollywood's noise. She once said motherhood humbled her, that it changed how she saw the world and herself. She tried to shield Dexter and Duke from fame's glare, to raise them with honesty and care. That's what makes these allegations, even if unproven, so gut-wrenching. Because if they were true, then Diane wasn't just another Hollywood star gone too soon. She was a mother who unknowingly nurtured the hands that would later fight over her legacy. As news spread, the aftermath turned into a full-blown family war. Dexter and Duke, united in public but secretly clashing behind the scenes, went head-to-head with Dory and Robin, Diane's biological sisters. The two sides hired armies of lawyers, arguing over everything, from real estate and royalties to investments and personal belongings. Every meeting, every phone call grew more explosive, filled with shouting and tears. The sisters claimed they had been there for Diane since childhood, that they'd earned their share. The adopted children countered, saying they were the ones who cared for Diane every day. The truth? Buried somewhere beneath the emotion, the jealousy, and the millions of dollars at stake. And so the question still lingers. Who will ultimately inherit Diane Keaton's fortune? Will the court side with Dexter and Duke, the adopted heirs who lived with her for decades? Or will Dory and Robin, her biological sisters, prove their lifelong bond means more? One thing's certain. This isn't just a story about money. It's about love, betrayal, and the dark side of legacy. And as the battle rages on, fans around the world are watching every new headline, every court update, wondering what really happened inside Diane's final home. Because in Hollywood, even death can become a mystery worth millions. If you're hooked on this wild Hollywood drama, don't miss what comes next. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay tuned for more shocking twists, hidden truths, and celebrity scandals you won't believe.